Welcome everyone. 4th February morning session with one of India's greatest film directors, daughter dedicated to preserving and reaching out the legacy of really one of the world's greatest film directors, cinematographers, Bimal Roy. And the Bimal Roy Memorial Committee over the years has sort of taken forward many activities, and it's our pleasure to have Rinki Roy here. Rinki Roy Bhattacharya.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rinki. And we decided, actually, of all the directors to start. It was between Mehboob Khan. It's less now. Slightly, it's still there, but it's still less. And over the last 25 years, Bimal Roy has been a very important part of our collection, simply because the black and white photography of the period, especially of films like Bandhani, Sujata, and a few others, was really remarkable in the still photography, in the photographic stills, in the lobby cards, in all the materials. Our task is to recreate the archives of not just Indian cinema, but at least 140 countries' cinema. So once and for all, the world has free access to these objects, and then integrate them with the fine arts, with photography, with printmaking, with architectural heritage, automotive heritage, the worlds of design, the worlds of magic, the worlds of so many other things. So let us start, Rinki, with a very simple question. As a human being first, as a father, because usually when you dedicate your life to one thing with such obsession and focus, everything else gets a bit compromised. You don't have the time, you don't have the wherewithal. How did he balance the life as a husband, as a father, as a filmmaker? Or was there always sacrifice to his filmmaking?
Can I just begin by thanking you, in particular, and Ocean for doing this. Oceanama. And also for all of you to braving a winter and Monday morning. Of course, I'll be great pleasure to talk about my father as a father.
And that's a small being. Few minutes.
Few minutes, of course. He never compromised. I mean, he was the perfect father, the perfect husband. I have never seen a happier married couple within the film industry, particularly in Bombay. My parents were just made for each other.
So wonderful.
My mother is one of the most brilliant photographers. There's studies on her in Cambridge. The cover is by her, the cover photograph. So they took photographs of each other. It was a lovely, lovely household, lovely childhood. And I'm so blessed and so privileged to be his daughter.
So wonderful.
And also today his biographer.
And the way the life was balanced, therefore, with so much dedication to cinema, were the children involved in the filmmaking? Was the wife involved, or they were kept apart?
No, we were not involved in the filmmaking. My mother, of course, had her say. She would also, when there were story sessions at home, she would take part, active part in that. And but that's all a part of the whole scenario. The ambience in the house was incredible. So aesthetic. My father always had bowls of flower in his room, had photographs in his office. It was, even his own little private world was very aesthetic, extremely aesthetic.
But then let's go back to the PC Barua days, and one of the greatest directors who himself started so many trends. Do you remember anything particular about his, how he was influenced by PC?
I wasn't even born at that time.
But he must have told you.
Yes. No. My father never talked about himself.
I see.
He was, my first book on him was called The Man of Silence.
Okay.
Everyone I met, all his stars, once he passed away when I was hardly 23. And I was completely devastated by his death because I was very close to him. And I went on talking to people who had worked with him, and I'm glad I did that because no one is alive anymore. I've talked to his cameramen, I talked to his stars like Kanan Devi, like Bashanta Chaudhary, all his senior artists. Everyone said he never spoke. And what attracted Nitin Bose to my father, Nitin Bose was like my father's mentor, was to see my father come to the set and polish the camera silently. Just keep it ready for Nitin uncle to shoot. He said, that dedication just to to a technical thing like a camera, was so remarkable. I've not seen that. He was so completely
The camera is the heart of any great film.
yes, yes. And my father, I think, fortunately for us, we who watch his films, he began as a cameraman. He began actually as a still photographer.
I see, a still
Yes,
photographer
yes.
to a
Barua
cameraman.
loved my father's still photography, and so my father was struggling to survive in Calcutta. I mean, I don't know if you know his biographical. He left everything in Bangladesh, and he came penniless to Calcutta. He was only 19, with my grandmother and his two brothers. And from then started his struggle. There were days when, I'm not joking, today it's difficult to believe that my father didn't even have anything to go with rice. I mean, he's seen very hard days.
Yes.
And my grandmother raised them with a lot of difficulty. And so he used to look for jobs, anything. So he landed up at the studio, and then, you know, I don't know what attracted Barua to him, but he saw his work as a cameraman, as a still photographer. And he said, you take my, you do the publicity photography.
Any stills of your father still left?
Yeah, most of them are there. Many of them are
Wonderful.
there. Yes, stills taken by him, yes. He continued to photograph. Even when he was working, he was a very famous...
I mean, of those days, of PC.
Those days, very few are there, but I think some of the best, I mean, Kanan Devi has told me herself, he said, the way your father made us look, made the women look, we all wanted to be photographed by him.
But we'll come to that. That's a central part of his whole relationship with women, empowering them, making them the central figure. But so with PC Barua, what was it that PC, apart from the encouragement, having an aesthetic sensibility?
Yes.
What else?
It was, I think he did strike a very big bond and a rapport with PC Barua in a very quiet, silent way, due to which Baba shot the first, the Hindi Devdas. That was his first independent work as a DOP, Saigal's Devdas. Barua's Devdas was shot by Nitin uncle, and Baba shot Saigal's Devdas. But the most incredible thing is he shot a film called Mukti with PC Barua, Kanan Devi, which is a landmark today.
Yes.
Mukti's photography went on to, everybody went to watch the film not because of the stars, but because of the photography of Mr. Bimal Roy, whose name was displayed on the billboards with the stars. So, you know, he began as a star photographer. I mean, today people talk of others, you know, like, you know, any of the top, you know, photographers of the world today. But my father was one of the top photographers at the age of, I think, his early 30s. So his name was there, Mukti, and his name was there on the billboards. That's what I've heard.
Right underneath PC's name.
Yes, yes.
Kapur, Chatterjee and Pankaj
and also
Mulek.
Mr. Barua really recognized talent. I have to say that to him.
So what was special about PC Barua, according to your father? Did he ever write or say anything about other people also? Or
he dedicated his Devdas to PC Barua and to Mr. Sarkar. But no, he didn't. As I said, he hardly spoke.
even about other people?
Never, never. Not at all.
It's a lovely personality.
He was completely obsessed with filmmaking, with the frame and what
So
sound.
what did he
and
learn about camera work from PC Barua or direction?
From
Obviously
when
moving.
he learned, you know, my father used to watch films every day at home. We had a 16mm projector, and he would watch Battleship Potemkin every evening like a student. And we were so bored because it was such a gory film for children. You know, we would come there and he would say, you know, that war of the thing, and we'd run away. You know? But he would be watching it every evening.
So Einstein was just that movie or other movies, and his drawings, his screenplay, the way he shot his films?
Yeah. No, he was particularly fond of Russian cinema, I think. And you know, people like Sham, who've written in my book, they have said that there is a stamp of the Russian school of lighting in some of his work. Like, you know, if you see a film like Biraj Bahu, you know, there's a slant on the boat when Kamini Kaushal is being abducted. You know, that kind of Russian angle, that's what Sham Benegal thinks.
No, it's important because so many people linked it to Italian neorealism later. And therefore that stuck as the main influence, especially with Do Bika Zameen and a few other later films. But the Eisenstein in so many Asian countries, he's always forgotten, though he's always a important influence.
Absolutely, he is the writer of grammar. I mean, Eisenstein is really, truly one of the founders, pioneers.
And in India, I'm not sure how much we've sort of, anyway, we'll move back to that later. So then, what other influences do you remember that he sort of really respected, and he was, anything else comes to your mind?
Influences,
or just inspirations, or just learnings, or whatever the word.
You know, my father was also extremely, I would say, a sincere reader. He was very close to literature.
Okay.
And I have to say something which I have treasured in a way. A friend of mine who is a composer and loves Bengali, music, like Tagore's music. He said, Rinki Di, your father is what Tagore was to literature. Your father is Tagore of cinema. I think there's a lot to understand. It's a very layered statement on his part, because you see the kind of sensibility you see in my father's works. There's so much of compassion.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say my father's cinema is the cinema not just of cinema of resistance. His first film is totally against the British, against Brown Sahibgiri, against, he is literally mocking people who are aping the British in their lifestyle, the hero's character. And, it's a very subtle way of resistance. Remember, the British were in power. If it was very obvious, my father would have been jailed. But he brought it in a very subtle way. Every dialogue, do you know that film Udayar Pathe's dialogues were on record, available on record? 75mm records, because those days, if you show the film, people would be saying the dialogues, like Sholay dialogues today. And they were very firebrand, extremely firebrand, and there was no, getting away from the fact.
Well, the social responsibility of his mind will come to systematic. I just want to finish the overview of his journey. So basically, from PCBs, apart from that jump from cinematographer to director, which happened over 3-4 films, anything else that before we leave this part of his life and move to the next?
Before we leave Kolkata?
Well, before we leave PCBs relationship and new theatres. To some extent.
I think he was greatly impacted by the whole New Theatre's ideology. You see, who were the people, New Theatre, the kind of films they made? They made adaptations of Tagore, adaptations of Sarad Babu, and they made a great impact on my father. Great impact, because he'd seen Tagore. I would have gone to Shantiniketan to study had we not moved to Bombay. So, my uncle, my father's eldest brother, was the history professor from Tagore's times. So we have seen a lot of that Tagorean era, and he was the professor of Amartya Sen and people like that. So we have grown up in an extremely cultured home, despite the fact that my father belonged to a rural zamindari family. He completely disowned that part of his life. He hated the zamindars, for whatever the reason. In every film, I will make a case study of a film like Madhumati.
Yes, absolutely.
I just saw it 2 days back. I showed it, And amazing that, in a film like Madhumati, which is so contrary to Bimal Roy films, who makes Sujata and Dobi Ka Zameen, this is a incredible story, a totally masala formula story. Even there, he's taking up for the oppressed.
Absolutely. You see, one of the things that we were having another dialogue, one of our research themes is the genre of horror, mystery, and sci-fi. And there's a fundamental difference between Indian concept of horror and the Western concept of horror. And in understanding it, it was why? Because in India, there are already so many living ghosts because of the feudal oppression. Every part, every village, every small town of India is living with ghosts because of the injustice that has been meted out to the people. And Madhumati in that way is a perfect example of showing why in Indian genre of horror, there is no such thing as horror as you see in the Western concept. We are not afraid of ghosts in some way. There's a sadness, there's a disappointment, there's a yearning, there's a longing, there's a part which is incomplete in life. But it's not the same thing as horror. And therefore, ability to understand rebirth, reincarnation, links to the souls of people is radically different. Yes. And when he came to Madhumati, it was, apart from anything else, the way he merged the music,
oh my
and
God.
the underlying thing is
incredible, incredible.
Absolutely.
And also, see, Madhumati is also about the disposition of the tribals.
Yes.
is the main character, Madhumati's father, has been dispossessed by the zamindari. See all the layers of the invisible links which runs throughout Bimal Roy's films.
Well, let's just go back to his days also with IPTA.
Yes.
But before IPTA, sorry, I want to finish with Sarkar and new theatres. What else about new theatres sort of gave him that confidence and a sense of...
I think it gave him the perfect foundation, to start. Firstly, here was this one of the, which were the studios which were at that time, so renowned, like New Theatres and Prabhat. Okay, so he was fortunate to have gone to New Theatres. I have to say, this is an extremely fortunate thing for my father to have, been honed there, groomed there. So he came back with a lot of these vital, not just about cinematic values, but about sanskar. The whole Indian sanskar, the tradition of what we should be proud of, he got that sanskar from there. There's no doubt about that.
Wonderful.
And who are the people who moved with him? He had some of the best talents in this country.
Yes.
Rinki Ghatak was my father's assistant. Very few people know. He wrote the story of Madhumati. There's something very interesting which
we'll come to that.
Yeah.
But let's just, before Rinki, let's come to IPTA.
Okay.
And the relationship, because IPTA was a very important part of Indian history, and its ability to inspire with a sense of social responsibility. Anything about those days that lingered in your biography or in the way you sort of saw his character develop as a personality?
Very much so. My father was complete, sympathizer of IPTA and IPTA's ideology and its value. He was a president of IPTA for 2 years, and many of them came to work when I'm like Balraj Sahani. All of them joined my father, So there were a lot of IPTA influence in Salil Chaudhary, for example, Rinki Ghatak, they were all IPTA people.
Well, I remember Balraj Sahni in your father's book many years ago, he had written how he could not live up to, or he felt that because he had taken certain later films which were slightly more commercial and less meaningful, he thought his father looked at him in a condescending kind of manner. But obviously that was not the case. It was more in Balraj Sahni's heart. But obviously then we moved to Do Bigha Zameen, and a turning point landmark film in the history of Indian cinema. Tell us about anything about those days, his mindset, what was on his mind. Obviously there was links to the novel, and as you said, the literature was always very close to his heart. How old were you at that time?
I was a kid at the time when he started Do Bigha Zameen. But I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Everybody, what is the logo of Bimal Roy Productions, you tell me?
No, just tell us, so we can move forward.
My father's, the Bimal Roy production logo is the University Tower of Bombay, my dear. Rajabai Tower. I mean, can you get closer to anything socially more responsible than that?
I don't remember.
Rajabai Tower, the chiming of this thing, is this thing. How many filmmakers have used that, you tell me that?
I have no clue. It's the first time I've heard of it.
No. I mean, I'm discovering my father every day. I
So
just said,
where
God.
was this logo published apart from in the films?
Not published.
Only in the films.
It opens.
It opened. So why Rajabai Tower? Just tell us, given we all are ignorant on this level.
Can you imagine? He really strongly believed that education was the backbone of a person. He wanted me to study in Oxford.
How did we miss this out?
You cannot miss it out. I have discovered it recently because now no longer that the university has moved. But when my father began the film, his production with Do Bigha Zameen, it was the University Tower. Rajabai Tower was the university. It symbolized the university, education, enlightenment, everything. So that's his vision. That is his total, vision of my father was education. Every film has that, And
Underline.
And not just that, very subtly, he would weave that in. Even, somebody, the character of Shambhu Mahato, who is a farmer in Do Bigha Zameen. Look at his delivery of language. Look at the way he speaks. Such refinement. He's not coarse like this thing. He actually, I would say, most of the heroes I can identify with. There's not much separation with my father's character and the character of his heroes. Very refined, extremely sophisticated, very sensitive. Even a farmer, his interaction, that little scene in the night with his wife, the way she tells him that she's expecting, and his response, it is unbelievably moving, unbelievably poignant.
But this is a very important point, that actually the autobiographical part, because it's done with such humility and it's done with such absolute, that what's in me must be in all humanity, that link between humanity and the individual, which comes from wisdom and a deep compassion more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so Though Big As a Mean was a film which sort of made all the hearts break down in many ways, and yet at the same time people did, I suppose when you look back you call it sentimental and so on, but for that time it was a bold film. And
yeah, it's called India's first neorealist film. It was inspired very much by Dissika's Bicycle Thieves, and also by Rashomon. My father saw the first international festival. He was also a great audience.
Rashomon was 52?
It's all
51.
this, yeah, 51, correct.
Yeah, 51. Because Though Big went to Cannes at 52 or 53?
54, 53, 54, yeah.
53, 54.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anything else you'd like to say on Though Big As a Mean? Because it's so much has been written on it, but anything that comes to your mind?
The other thing I'd like everyone to note is that some of the most important films my father made were written for him, including Though Big As a Mean. It's not from any published book. It was written by Salil Chaudhary. No, the story was by Salil Chaudhary. It was originally made in Bangla called Rikshawala by Satyen Bose. And Rishikesh Mukherjee happened to see the film. And my father was wanting to start a production house. So Rishida came and told my father, he said, here's a film which you might want. So my father saw it and he immediately signed up Salil Chaudhary. On the day Salil Chaudhary was getting married, so it was a very auspicious day for him. And he brought him, and not only did he give the music, he's the story writer. He's been credited as the story writer. I would love to
But let's focus on Chittor Prasad for a few minutes.
I don't know much about him. But
well, Chittor Prasad is the epitome of what a great artist dedicates their life to, their creativity. But how did it come that he did Though Big As a Mean's poster?
They were all together in IPTA.
IPTA.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
But was there anything else, or that was the only one-off?
That was the only one.
That was the only one-off collaboration.
I don't know if he offered to do it or my father asked him, but I've seen him around once or twice. He had
remember,
come.
I found this in Chittor Prasad's collection, this poster. This was with 22 other Polish posters and Russian posters of the 1950s. And obviously that was the greatest poster designing period in the world, when all the artists were fleeing from Stalin. And so suddenly artists became poster designers. And you'll see posters in which it's nothing about publicity. It's purely about a graphic design. And the Though Big As a Mean poster, when we found it, I remember it was a symbol for a big underlined spirit exhibition. It was the whole Lalit Kala had been taken up, and the whole banner was Chittor Prasad's poster of your father's film. And millions of people at that time had seen that poster that became, otherwise no one had seen that poster. And I always thought that Tayyab Mehta's Rikshawala was inspired by Though Big As a Mean. I've never sort of taken forward that idea, but maybe someone needs to sort of do some research, because Tayyab also had a sensibility which was very much like your father. And I always thought that this character just seemed to, and he had also a love for cinema, and especially that neo-realistic period. So maybe there's a link there which we haven't yet explored, which some research could sort of take forward. But there was another idea that I wanted to explore, and this is obviously core to all his cinema. And this is the way he privileges the woman. And then it gets very clear by having a relationship which is secure, loving, equal, based on mutual respect and compassion. Then obviously you have that sense of injustice which you need to right. Let's focus on that. And as a man, and the way he portrayed in Bandhani, or even Parinita, or whichever movie you want to take, and tell us his thoughts on the way the relationship between man and woman must be. Was it always so clinical, simple, that everything is absolutely equal? Or was there still, obviously, the age? You cannot divorce yourself from the age. India still was a deeply chauvinistic, unjust country, even still is, but then more so. How did he find this balance and sense? Was it just injustice he was always angry against injustice?
You know, my father never expressed himself in very, overt terms. Everything was very sublime and subtle with him. Even in the house, I mean, none of you will ever imagine the way we were brought up. There was no crassness. We were all, it was a beautifully, synchronized household. And my mother had absolute ultimate authority in the house and in his life. I would say, my father, in fact, not just my father, my uncles, my father's brothers, I have seen the happiest family lives, happiest families. I mean, it's very difficult to believe that they came from the feudal class. In fact, the villain's character in Madhumati is supposed to be drawn from my father's uncle, who was a childless man who almost adopted my father. And he used to be so evil that if he passed through the village, every woman ran and closed the door. So coming from that background, just to find my father and his uncle.
So how did this evolve?
I think it was, it was the whole aura of Tagorean, this thing, the very great influence of Tagore. Great influence of Tagore in our family, I would say. The elegance, the language they spoke. I have not heard one. If we said shut up, my father would shut us up. A word like shut up he considers was very wrong. So the elegance of the spoken language, it's incredible the way, my father groomed himself. And I think that whole foundation was not just New Theatres, it was also Vishwabharati Tagore, Shantiniketan.
Yes.
We used to go there every year during the winter months, and see early films. Udayar Pathe had Tagore music, Tagore songs. Even in some of the later films, also influence Tagore's music has influenced Salil Chowdhury, S.D. Burman. Nobody could escape Tagore's overall aura. The music and the elegance and the poetry. I think he was the umbrella, I would say. So that's where it came from.
So let's come to a film like Bandhani. Let's go back first to Do Bigha Zameen and the whole concept of land reform, because this also links to the social responsibility, that in each film there was something he wanted to privilege, something he wanted to focus on. And obviously coming from a Zamindar's family, the injustice must be deeper in his heart. Was that something that, did he always have a conflict that, because it seems that he never wanted to do anything else but be in films. So he had no aspirations for any practical political responsibility, and therefore he had to imbibe it in his cinema because he had a sense of justice. And he saw all the problems that India was facing. So as a creative mind, he had to weave it.
Yeah, let me also add that my father was a social activist in his own way. Just before he passed away, Nehru and he had a very strong relationship. Mr. Nehru had called my father to say, Mr. Roy, I believe there's a lot of black money in film industry. What do we do about it? Can we rid the film industry of black money? And that was maybe 2 or 3 years before my father passed away in 1966. And my father was the president of IMPA at the time. So he said that I will make films. I will not give one naya paisa black to anyone. So those who want to work with me will have to take everything in white. So obviously, IPTA had a lot of other, agenda. But 12 producers left IPTA, and my father founded the another breakaway organization, where all the top producers joined him, and they all said we will not pay black. So see, this is activism.
Well, look. Oceans, in 1997 when I came, 95, and started building the art world, 99% of the art world was in cash, everything. Till today, even when we went through virtual bankruptcy, we've never taken 1 rupee in cash, we've never made one sale. Now, to call that activism or to call that just the way, obviously it was very different in the 50s because the world had changed much more. But you're absolutely right. It's a principle. It's a way that, and that comes to that lack of crassness, that aesthetic. Because ethics and aesthetics, the heart of Tagorean vision was that if you have a great aesthetic sensibility, you must have a deep ethical framework.
Absolutely, yes.
And you cannot divorce these two worlds.
Yeah.
And therefore, anyone who is rooted in one must be true to the other.
Yes.
And so I see that in your father's work. I see that in people like, again, in a way, the more I think about it, I don't want to bring it, but because for us, the fine arts and cinema need bridges. And I do see more and more Tayyab Mehta and Bimal Roy and Tagore, and that lineage which no one has so far researched on. But I do feel that it's important that, because Tagore's influence in Bengal is all-encompassing, but still people have not recognized how it's reached and seeped into the rest of India. Because here is the greatest creative mind that we've sort of given rise to in the last 150 odd years. But let's come back then to...
So let me just finish. He
yes.
started his last film, he left it incomplete, called Sahara, for which he signed Sharmila Tagore and Dharmender, who said, yes, we will work without taking any cash. Salil Chaudhary refused, who was my father's favorite composer. So he took Roshanji and he shot for 5 days and then he fell ill. So that remains incomplete. And the story is very interesting. The story of Sahara was by one of the leading women writers of Bengal called Ashapurna Devi. And it was the story of a woman who is a thief. Can you believe it? In mainstream cinema, the courage a man has to have to project the female character as a Dalit in Sujata, as a murderess in Bandini, and then a thief who is she's a born kleptomaniac. I mean, imagine the combination of these issues.
And that with deep compassion, with the
deep,
sense of showing the opposite.
I would say my father's cinema is compassion, cinema of inclusiveness, cinema where no discrimination is allowed. Seeing Dobika Zameen, a British critic had seen a Dickensian touch. He said where he humanizes even a pickpocket, the character of a pickpocket. So my father really believed in, total, the whole thing that humanism was the ultimate religion.
Well, when the research grants begin in end of April, you had mentioned when we were speaking on getting a world-class documentary film made on your father. I think it's a critical need. Well, look, all great cinema has to have that authenticity of a lived life.
Yeah.
It's not possible to just have an intellectual vision without that, real life experience. So let's come to this focus on the woman and privileging the role, trying to, at the same time, making her, in a way, the protagonist in a negative way, and yet through that process, bringing in the injustice. This is a unique way of presenting compassion and righting a wrong. Tell us about the nature of this mind that allows this, because it's fundamental for today. It's a mind rooted in much of Indian tradition, thought, mindset, and yet it has this sense of fairness, a sense of what is to be the nature of daily life. What was special in him in
I
that
mean, I'll
sense?
have to again come back, Neville, to the whole idea that it was the way he saw women was, very Tagorean, and he saw them as, aesthetic creatures, as giving people who were extremely, who were in charge of their life, who could control their destiny. I mean, of course, that was not, that was from Sarat Babu, the Devdas, Parvati's character. I find a very striking, the way she walks out in the night to meet Devdas is an amazing act of boldness. And she doesn't care. Her faith in the man and in her love is so much that she dares to walk out from her house and visits him in the night. How many women would dare to do that even today, and not cast aspersions on herself? But that was, of course, Sarat Babu's this thing. But what I'm saying is my father saw women as an extremely, people who were individuals in their own right, who had a right to their own destiny, and, who could work things out. And what more can I say? I don't know.
Look, then I think...
And also he saw that, education was the root of everything, for which I blame myself. I didn't go to study in Oxford, and I was 17 and I was so much in love, so I just ran away. But the thing is, he saw that for me.
Well, look, from someone who did go to Oxford, and while I was there, I really didn't care about it. It's only when you leave a place you realize the importance of a place. And but I made one major jump which I didn't want to make. I forgot along the way. Obviously, the focus on Devdas, and also a focus on Saigal, because here's a great personality of cinema, totally forgotten in today's age. So let's just go back to Devdas, and between P.C. Baba's Devdas and your father's Devdas, and in bringing in Saigal. Anything that you feel which has not been written about, which has not been privileged or not highlighted, that we need to sort of understand in that transformation? Why did he choose to make it himself? Was the power of the story, or also Sharat Chandra's influence? That also is being left out.
Yeah, but my father has written, I think, I don't know if I've included it in this book. Yeah. He has written why he does Sharat Chandra's works. He says, like Shakespeare, he offers a fantastic, almost a ready-made screenplay for filmmakers. So he's chosen 3. He's done Parinita was the first one, Biraj Bahu, and then Devdas. I think Devdas he was obsessed with, because he worked in 2 Devdas previous to that. He was the assistant cameraman of Badua's Devdas. He was the lead cameraman in Saigal's Devdas, and then he went on to make his. And I was told, I can't authenticate this, but then when he wanted the rights of Devdas back from Mr. B.N. Sarkar, Mr. Sarkar, New Theatres was in a bad shape. So Mr. Sarkar quoted an astronomical figure. He says, can you give me this? My father did not question. He gave him 50,000 in 51 to buy the rights of the film. 50,000 was a lot of money those days.
Well, I love also, I think, in your book, where Shashi Kapur is always, when he first Prem Patra, how much is B.R. Chopra paying you? And then later, when Vat was being made, I think, 1,25,000.
Yeah.
And he questions, but he pays that amount.
Correct.
And even though the nature of the cinema is different, B.R. Chopra was working at a different. They were also friends in IPTA.
Of course.
But let's come back then to Devdas. And anything, this obsession with Devdas, is it just because of the nature of the screenplay?
No. It was the whole,
And his past experience.
I think even he was excited about the film because of the 3 characters.
Why would such a way, a really decadent subject be of such inspiration? So obviously, then it's about the art. It's not about
it's like like Hamlet, being made and remade. How many times Devdas has been made in this country? You tell me.
This obsession with Devdas, I'm also always wonder about it. Have you wondered why we have this obsession with Devdas?
It's become like a part of our phraseology when we say, oh, Devdas ban gaya, like somebody in love who's not got the girl and he starts drinking, So, one can never say, I think it's basically literature and also the whole excitement of recreating those characters, the 3 characters, especially Paro and Chandramukhi's characters. And it was also that era.
So tell us about Naukri.
Yeah, immediately after Do Bigha Zameen. And there were questions, why is Bimal Roy making these films immediately after independence, when we should be euphoric? Do Bigha Zameen. And there were questions asked in the British press, that why is such a grim, dark film coming from India after 4 years after independence. Naukri was even worse, even more dark. The hopelessness. In fact, the end would have been probably the man committing suicide. It comes to that. But he changed it. In Do Bigha Zameen also, my father did a little re-edit. In the end, the woman had died on the streets. And when it was released in Calcutta, these are things nobody would know. I mean, I've heard this from my childhood. Rishikesh Mukherjee had gone with the print to release in Calcutta. It was released in Calcutta Metro Cinema. And again, first Indian film to be released in Metro was Do Bigha Zameen. Do you know that?
No.
No one released Indian films in Metro Cinema. That was a stronghold of the British and the Hollywood. So that's the first Indian film, and they had given it limited release, only for 4 weeks. And Meghnad Desai has written about that. So when it was
old tutor of mine in LSE.
So when it was released in Calcutta with Nirupa Roy's character not alive, people couldn't take it. Audiences it was too morbid. So then he reshot that, the last scene where 3 of them are going.
But how long would that process take for the new print to come?
My father was an extremely expensive director and producer.
No, so,
he didn't
but that film must have ran with Nirupa Roy passing away for at least a few months.
Yeah, not few months, just one shot.
I see.
Instead of Shambhu and the son walking away from the scene where, that hand, again, that's a very, very graphically, graphic, I would say, a very Soviet image of the hand and the earth.
Yes.
Through that, this thing. It's a brilliant image, brilliant.
We can all take a 2-minute break or 4-minute break or 3-minute break.
Yeah, sure.
And just enjoy.
Yeah.
हमें डर है हम खो न जाए कहीं सुहाना सफर आने मौसम हसीन.
I've seen this so many times. You are meeting actually Bimal Roy, the person, not the director. That was Bimal Roy. Let's come back to Yehudi. And why did this theme come about? How?
As I told you, he was, very enchanted with this whole cloak and dagger, kind of a thing. It was called Yehudi Ki Ladki.
Yes, there was an earlier movie called Yehudi Ki Ladki.
No, there were 3 films announced at the same time. Yehudi Ki Ladki, Yehudi and something else.
Okay.
So my father had acted in this. It's by, I don't remember the name of the writer, but they had done this as a college play. And he had acted in that, and he must have been kicked about it. So when Mr. Vacha, who was heading the Bombay Talkies, Bombay Talkies had already shut down, and he was in a very bad state. So he wanted to produce a film, and my father suggested this story, and it came about. And he made this simultaneously with Madhumati, the same year.
I see.
Same year. So he took Meena Kumari, and she was his favorite actress.
Really?
Meena Kumari and Dilip Kumar.
Well, Benazir gave that, you could sense that to some extent.
Yes.
But let's, anything particular about Yehudi in your father's life? Did it play an important role?
No, I just recently heard somebody say that, they really were full of admiration for the film, saying that, he's not made it in color, and yet you don't miss the color in a film like this. And, he's made it quite believable, the story. I mean, it's quite an incredible story. But, people love it still.
Well, you must get in touch with, if you're not already, with a gentleman called Kenneth Robbins, who's obsessive for the last 10, 15 years on the role of Jews in Indian cinema. So he's been, and he has a museum in America.
Okay.
And we've tried to not sell him anything, and in the end we've never sold him anything. But from Nadira to whole host of stars in early cinema, and obviously Yehudi. But it's strange, the kind of foci, there's hundreds of people around the world who are focusing on one aspect of cinema. If all of them come together, there's great synergies. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do. But then let's come to Meena Kumari, and his favorite actress being Meena Kumari.
She was discovered by my father in Bombay Talkies when he was looking for a heroine for Parinita, and it was Ashok Kumar's first production. Parinita was Ashok Kumar's first production.
I didn't know that also.
Yes, and my father was all packed and ready to go back to Calcutta. He couldn't take Bombay. He really couldn't, because you don't have these addas and meeting. He would be meeting poets and writers and musicians in Calcutta. There was no such ambience in Bombay. Yeah. So he was very unhappy, and then we decided to go back, and Ashok Kumar was responsible for my father coming to Bombay, by the way. There was one man who you should not forget to mention, is Hiten Chaudhary, who was my father's classmate, a very debonair bachelor, whose personal friend was David Lean, who used to come and stay with Hitu Kaka. And Hitu Kaka was also in Bombay Talkies, and they came from the same village.
And David Lean had visited India? No.
He used to stay with my uncle, of course, of course.
But we've never seen anything of India in
they used to live in
films.
Pale Hill. He had a huge palatial villa, Mr. Chaudhary, who produced Biraj Bahu. He was my father's childhood friend. So he and Ashok Kumar brought Baba to Bombay Talkies, and I believe my father was paid a huge salary of 50,000 a month, which was a lot of money those days. You know, I was told later by uncle, and by then Ashok Kumar decided to start his own production house, and he had bought the rights of Parinita, and he told my father, he said, you know, you can't go back, you have to direct this film for us. So willy-nilly my father agreed to direct, and then they were looking for, that was the time when Ashok Kumar and Nalini Jayawant were the biggest box office star pair. And obviously Ashok Kumar said, we'll take Nalini Jayawant. So my father just gave him a look and said, have you read the story? So he said, go and read it again and then tell me. But I don't think he was very polite. He said, no, I don't think so. Meanwhile, he was looking, and then Meena Kumari had come for some work or audition to Bombay Talkies, and he saw her. And he said, yes, I found my Lalita in her. And she was nobody. Baiju Baura had not started. Both Baiju Baura and Parinita were in the same year, but Baiju Baura released earlier.
Before.
So she got the Best Actress Award for Baiju Baura in Filmfare. The first Filmfare had only 5 awards: Best Film, Best Director, Best Music, Best Actor, Best Hero. My father got 2 for Do Biga Zamin, director and producer. She got for Baiju Baura. Ashok Kumar got, Dilip Kumar got for Daag, and Naushad Saab got for Baiju Baura.
Meena Kumari, and his favorite actress being Meena Kumari.
She was discovered by my father in Bombay Talkies when he was looking for a heroine for Parinita, and it was Ashok Kumar's first production. Parinita was Ashok Kumar's first production.
I didn't know that also.
Yes, and my father was all packed and ready to go back to Calcutta. He couldn't take Bombay. He really couldn't, because you know, you don't have this addas and meeting. He would be meeting poets and writers and musicians in Calcutta. There was no such ambience in Bombay. So he was very unhappy. And then we decided to go back, and Ashok Kumar was responsible for my father coming to Bombay, by the way. There was one man who you should not forget to mention, is Hiten Chaudhary, who was my father's classmate, a very debonair bachelor, whose personal friend was David Lean, who was to come and stay with Hitu Kaka. And Hitu Kaka was also in Bombay Talkies, and they came from the same village.
And David Lean had visited India? No.
He used to stay with my uncle, of course, of course.
But we've never seen anything of India in
they used to
any
live
of
in
his films.
Pale Hill. He had a huge palatial villa, Mr. Chaudhary, who produced Biraj Bahu. He was my father's childhood friend. So he and Ashok Kumar brought Baba to Bombay Talkies, and I believe my father was paid a huge salary of 50,000 a month, which was a lot of money those days. You know, I was told later by uncle. And by then Ashok Kumar decided to start his own production house, and he had bought the rights of Parinita, and he told my father, he said, you know, you can't go back, you have to direct this film for us. So willy-nilly my father agreed to direct, and then they were looking for, that was the time when Ashok Kumar and Nalini Jayawant were the biggest box office star pair. And obviously Ashok Kumar said, we'll take Nalini Jayawant. So my father just gave him a look and said, have you read the story? So he said, go and read it again and then tell me. But I don't think he was very polite. He said, no, I don't think so. Meanwhile, he was looking, and then Meena Kumari had come for some work or audition to Bombay Talkies, and he saw her. And he said, yes, I found my Lalita in her. And she was nobody. Baiju Baura had not started. Both Baiju Baura and Parinita were in the same year, but Baiju Baura released earlier.
Before.
So she got the Best Actress Award for Baiju Baura in Filmfare. The first Filmfare had only 5 awards: Best Film, Best Director, Best Music, Best Actor, Best Hero. My father got 2 for Do Biga Zamin, director and producer. She got for Baiju Baura. Ashok Kumar got, Dilip Kumar got for Daag, and Naushad Saab got for Baiju Baura.
And Bimal Roy, must be mutual love and respect?
No, of course. Raj Kapur was also a product of very much, his father was a product of New Theatres, Prithviraj. So he was always lamenting. He said, he used to tell my father, why haven't you taken me as a hero? He and Devanand both, they died to work with my father, both of them. But unfortunately, they didn't. No, there's a little caricature of his song in the film. So when he was being compared...
Raj Kapur was offended?
Yeah.
I
He
see.
said, Dada ne aisa kar diya hamare first song ko. So he goes on record in the radio thing.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, you know, everyone's very, very sensitive, and I don't think Bimala would have that kind of.
No. It was in good, in good taste. There's nothing obnoxious. It shows the popularity of his film.
No,
Nothing
obviously,
else.
yes.
That even a Shusain Boy is singing Awara Ka Gana, na? So that's it.
Okay. What else? Let's turn over to the audience a bit.
You were talking about the castings, which Bimalda was very famous for, and we also know because we have been watching his films since childhood. There is one thing which has been in my mind since maybe 20 years, 30 years, I don't know, but maybe because you are here, I just thought about it
Sure,
today.
tell me, yeah.
Regarding Devdas, we know about the three central characters when he casted Dilip Saab and Suchitra Sen and Vijayanti Mala. There is one particular, that Bhattacharya ke upar jab when he goes with Motilal ji, Chunilal, the character, there is one particular shot where Johnny Walker and Pran are shown.
Yes.
What
They're
is
like
the,
character
what is,
artists.
was the meaning behind that? Means why?
No meaning. I mean,
It was just like a
you see,
gesture
every
to
star
friends.
was available to my father. I mean, he was, that time, he was like everybody's dada. So whoever wanted to come, they would come in and sit down. Yeah, there's one little scene with
Yeah,
them.
there
Yes,
is
of
one
course there
particular
is. Yeah,
scene,
sure.
and there is one particular shot I still remember, where I think nowhere you will see Dilip Saab, Motilal, Johnny Walker and Pran in one single frame. There is one shot I still remember in Devdas. So, you know, that was, it always in my mind ki that, what was the reason behind that, you know?
No,
They were just
Pran
fillers.
and they were just, yeah, they came as, I mean, what you call junior artists or extras.
Any other questions? Yes, Bobby.
I have a little question. Now that you've spoken about how in Bimal Roy's films, the women were given such unconventional roles for cinema. So I keep wondering what could have been the nature of the dialogue between the actress and the director. Because they performed those roles with such faith and with such conviction that the audience was moved as much as it was maybe Bimal Roy's design. So can you throw some light on that?
Well,
Yes.
let's focus on Nutan, because at the end of the day, we
Correct.
have
I was
missed
going to
out
come
on
to Nutan, yes.
And
Yeah, my father never, which Shashi has documented, unlike Raj Kapur, my father did not play out a character to his actors. And my father did not speak Hindi at all, which was he turned that to his advantage, by the way. He could speak only Bangla and English, of course. So he had a man called Paul Mahindra.
he never spoke Hindi?
No. He had this guy who's given the credit as the dialogue director called Paul Mahindra, who was a bilingual. He was a Punjabi, but he spoke perfect Bengali. And he was given the task of reading out the dialogues to the artists. Now, there's one particular scene in Sujata, that famous song of Talat Saab on the telephone.
Yeah. Let's play
Beautiful
that
song.
one then after.
Beautiful song.
जलते हैं जिसके लिए तेरी आंखों के दिए ढूंढ लाया हूँ वही गीत में तेरे लिए जलते हैं जिसके लिए
Thank you very, very much for being here. and
Thank
gracing
you.